Billionaire CEO asks for help on the road and discovers that the mechanic is his ex-girlfriend, now a single mother. Before we start the story, leave in the comments which city are you watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story, everyone. Daniel Whitaker had $247 million in net worth, 3 diplomas hanging on his office wall, a network of 112 auto repair shops spread across 32 American states, and absolutely no idea how to get out of this situation. His Italian sports car, valued at over $400,000, was stopped on the shoulder of a road in the middle of nowhere, somewhere between civilization and the end of the world, making a pathetic hissing sound that resembled an asthmatic cat trying to sing opera. Daniel looked at the dashboard. All the lights were flashing like a panicked Christmas tree. He got out of the car, adjusted his $3,000 suit, and opened the hood with the confidence of someone who had graduated with honors in mechanical engineering from one of the best universities in the country. 5 seconds later, he knew exactly what the problem was. 10 seconds later, he realized that knowing the problem meant absolutely nothing when you have no tools, no parts, no cell signal, and the only thing around you are cornfields that seem to stretch into infinity. Daniel Whitaker, the man who led meetings with Wall Street investors, who closed million-dollar deals with a handshake, who had been on the cover of the most important business magazine in the country at 33 years old, was standing on the shoulder of a deserted road, staring at his own car's engine as if it were a menu written in Japanese. He could read it. He just couldn't do anything about it. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a screwdriver. "All right," he said to himself, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair. "All right, situations like this build character." The car responded with another pathetic hiss. "Thank you so much for your contribution," Daniel muttered, looking at the engine with deep disappointment. He walked in circles for a few minutes, holding his phone up to the sky as if making an offering to the telecommunications gods. Nothing. Not a single bar of signal. Daniel looked at the empty road. One way, nothing. The other way, more nothing. And then, right on the horizon, he saw it. A sign. Old, rusty, slightly crooked, with letters that had seen better days. Miller's Auto Shop, 2 miles. Daniel had never been so happy to see an ugly sign in his life. He considered his options for exactly 3 seconds. He could wait there, in the middle of nowhere, hoping that some car would pass by. Or he could walk 2 miles under the late afternoon sun, ruin his $800 Italian shoes, and arrive at an auto shop that, judging by the sign, probably used tools from the Civil War era. Daniel started walking. 40 minutes later, with his shoes destroyed, his suit wrinkled, and his ego significantly smaller, he arrived at the shop. It was exactly what he expected. A wooden shed that looked like it had been built when cars were still a novelty. Tools scattered everywhere. An old dog sleeping at the entrance who didn't even bother to lift his head when Daniel passed by. And a smell of oil, grease, and something he could only describe as history. The shop door was slightly open. Daniel took a deep breath, adjusted what was left of his dignity, and walked in. "Excuse me?" he called out. "Is anyone there? My car broke down on the road and—" He stopped talking, stopped breathing, stopped functioning as a human being. Because the person who slid out from under an old car, wiping her hands on a dirty rag, with a smudge of grease on her nose and her hair pulled up in a messy bun, was someone he knew very well. Hannah Miller. She looked at him. He looked at her. The whole world seemed to freeze in that split second. Daniel felt as if someone had sucked all the air out of his lungs and then politely asked if he was okay. "Hannah?" Daniel's voice came out half-strangled, as if his vocal cords had forgotten how to work. "Hannah Miller?" He took a step back, then forward, not knowing exactly what to do with his own body. This can't be," he continued, running his hand over his face. "I must be having heat stroke. That's it. I walked too long in the sun and now I'm hallucinating." Hannah didn't say anything. She just kept looking at him with those brown eyes that he had never been able to completely forget. Are you really here?" Daniel asked, and then did something he would never admit later. He reached out and poked her shoulder with his index finger, as if checking whether she was real. Hannah looked at her own shoulder. Then she looked at him. One eyebrow slightly raised, but the corner of her mouth almost almost curving into something that could be amusement. "Did you just poke me?" Sorry, I just..." Daniel stammered. The 33-year-old CEO, who negotiated million-dollar contracts, was standing there, stammering like a nervous teenager. "It's just that How are you here?" He gestured frantically, pointing at her, at the shop, at the universe in general. "I looked for you," he said, his voice coming out more vulnerable than he intended. "For months. You disappeared and Daniel stopped, swallowed hard, realized he was saying too much. Hannah remained silent for a moment. Something passed through her eyes, something Daniel couldn't identify. A shadow of surprise, perhaps, or maybe something older, more guarded. Then, as if she had made an internal decision, she took a deep breath and assumed a professional posture. Not cold, just controlled. "Your car broke down," she said, her voice calm and neutral. It wasn't a question. Daniel blinked, still trying to process the change. "Yes," he answered, because apparently his $247 million brain had decided to take a vacation. "Where is it?" 2 miles, on the main road. Hannah nodded, as if filing away the information, as if he were just any customer, as if 10 years hadn't passed since the last time they were together. "What model?" she asked. Daniel said the name of the car. Hannah slightly raised an eyebrow. It was the only sign that she had registered its value. "Italian," she commented, an almost imperceptible tone of "that explains a lot" in her voice. "Those tend to give trouble." "I know," Daniel said. "I know exactly what the problem is. I just don't have the means to." "Fix it," Hannah completed. "I understand. That's what I'm here for." She walked past him, grabbed a toolbox from a shelf, and headed toward an old pickup truck parked outside. Halfway there, she looked over her shoulder. "You can come with me, unless you prefer to wait here." It wasn't rudeness, it was just practicality. A woman used to solving problems without wasting time on formalities. Daniel blinked. I'll go with you." "All right," she said simply, and kept walking. He followed her, feeling strangely out of his own body, as if he were watching himself from the outside. The old dog at the entrance finally lifted his head when they passed by. He looked at Daniel with an expression that could only be described as silent evaluation. Then, apparently deciding that he wasn't interesting enough, went back to sleep. Daniel got in the pickup truck. Hannah started the engine and drove off. No rush, no conversation. The radio was broken. The air conditioning, apparently, was an abstract concept in that vehicle, and the passenger seat had a spring that insisted on poking Daniel in uncomfortable places. He didn't complain. Not because he was polite, but because, for the first time in many years, Daniel Whitaker had absolutely no idea what to say. The CEO who led meetings with international investors, who negotiated million-dollar contracts without batting an eye, who always had a ready answer for any situation, was sitting in an old pickup truck next to a woman he hadn't seen in a decade, completely and absolutely speechless. When they arrived at the sports car, Hannah parked and got out without ceremony. Daniel watched her approach the vehicle. She didn't open the hood immediately. First, she walked around the car, slowly, observing every detail. Then she leaned in and pressed her ear against the body, as if listening to a confession. Daniel frowned. "What are you?" Hannah raised a finger, asking for a moment. Without harshness, just concentration. He stayed silent. Hannah closed her eyes. She stayed like that for a long moment, as if she were hearing something no one else could hear. Then she opened the hood, placed her hand on the engine, and stood still again. Her fingers moved slowly, feeling, mapping. "He's exhausted," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "What do you mean?" "The car," Hannah explained, opening her eyes. "You demanded too much from him." Daniel opened his mouth to argue, to explain that cars don't get exhausted, that this wasn't a valid technical diagnosis, that he had a degree in mechanical engineering, and knew very well how engines worked. But then Hannah ran her finger through the engine grease and touched her own nose, leaving another black smudge there. And Daniel recognized the gesture. It was the same gesture she used to make in college, whenever she was about to solve a problem that nobody else could, whenever her brain had found the answer before anyone else. "Temperature sensor," Hannah said, turning her eyes back to the engine. "But that's not all. The cooling system is compromised. You drove too fast, on a day that was too hot for too long." The car went into protection mode. Daniel was silent for a moment. That's exactly it," he admitted, his voice low. Hannah nodded without arrogance. Just confirmation. I figured. She started working, her hands moving with a familiarity that came from years of practice. Confident, precise, completely in control. Daniel stood there, frozen, feeling completely useless. He who knew everything about cars, he who commanded an entire network of auto shops, he who could buy this entire little town if he wanted, was standing there, watching his ex-girlfriend fix his car while he couldn't do absolutely anything to help. The irony was so heavy you could feel the weight on your shoulders. And somewhere, Daniel was certain the universe was laughing at him. A lot. Hannah's hands moved as if they had a life of their own. Daniel couldn't stop watching. She had towed the sports car back to the shop, and now she was there, leaning over the $400,000 engine, murmuring things Daniel couldn't quite hear. Every now and then, she would tilt her head, close her eyes, and seem to be having a private conversation with the vehicle. "Are you talking to my car?" Daniel asked, genuinely curious. "I'm listening," Hannah replied, without taking her eyes off the engine. "Cars talk. Most people just don't know how to listen." Daniel opened his mouth to say something about how that didn't make the slightest scientific sense, but then Hannah touched a specific spot on the engine and murmured, "Here. You're suffering here, aren't you?" The CEO of a network of 112 auto shops fell silent. Because he had engineers with doctorates who couldn't diagnose problems with the precision that this woman with a messy bun and a greasy nose was showing. "The sensor is compromised." Hannah continued, more to herself than to him. "But that's not all. The water pump is at its limit. Another 50 miles or so, and you would have been stranded for real." "How do you know it was 50 miles? Daniel asked. Hannah finally looked at him. For a second, something almost like amusement passed through her eyes. "You drive like you're running from something. I bet you left an important meeting, got in the car, accelerated without thinking, and only realized where you were when it was already too late." Daniel felt his ears getting warm. "I wasn't running," he said, crossing his arms. "I was processing." "Processing at 180 miles per hour? 175, he corrected automatically. Hannah raised an eyebrow. "Oh, well, then everything's fine." Daniel had no response to that, which was irritating because he always had a response to everything. Hannah turned her attention back to the car. After a few more minutes of inspection, she stepped back and wiped her hands on the rag she carried in her back pocket. "I'm going to need to put it on the lift to see the underside," she said. "It'll probably take a few hours. If you want, there's a diner 2 blocks away. The coffee is terrible, but the apple pie makes up for it." "I can help," Daniel said. Hannah stopped. She looked at him as if he had just spoken in a foreign language. "Help?" "Yes," Daniel confirmed, already taking off his jacket. "I know what I'm doing." "You're wearing a suit." "I was wearing a suit," he corrected, carefully folding the jacket and placing it on a chair. "Now I'm wearing a dress shirt that's going to be ruined in approximately 15 minutes. Hannah kept looking at him. The silence stretched for a moment. "You're going to get your shoes dirty," she finally said. Daniel looked at his own feet. The Italian shoes that were already destroyed from the walk. They've already been through worse today. Something changed in Hannah's face. It wasn't exactly a smile, but the tension in her shoulders lessened slightly. "All right," she said, pointing to a shelf. "There are gloves over there. And if you break anything, you'll pay double." "Fair," Daniel agreed. He grabbed the gloves. They were old, worn, completely different from the premium gloves he used on the rare occasions when he still got his hands dirty. But they fit. Hannah positioned the car over the hydraulic lift. It was old equipment, but well-maintained. Daniel recognized the model. His company had stopped manufacturing that type at least 15 years ago. "Hold that there," Hannah instructed, pointing to a side lever. "When I signal, you pull slowly." "Got it." She looked at him for a moment, clearly expecting some objection. Some comment about how he knew how to do this better, or how at his company the processes were different, or anything that billionaire CEOs would normally say. Daniel just waited for the next instruction. Hannah blinked, then positioned herself on the other side. "Now," she said. He pulled the lever. The car began to rise, smooth and controlled. "Slower," Hannah requested. Daniel adjusted the force. The car rose a few more inches. "Stop." He stopped. Hannah slid under the vehicle with the ease of someone who had been doing this for years. Daniel watched, waiting for new instructions. Seconds later, she asked for a specific tool. He found it and handed it over. She asked for another. He handed it over again. And just like that, without any grand speech or dramatic moment, they fell into a rhythm. Hannah asked. Daniel delivered. Sometimes she explained what she was doing. Most of the time she didn't need to. He already knew. And when he anticipated the right tool before she even asked, Hannah didn't comment. She just accepted it and kept working. At some point, Daniel caught himself smiling. It was strange. He spent his days in endless meetings discussing numbers, strategies, market projections. It had been months since he had actually put his hands on a real engine. Years, maybe. And there he was, in an old shop in the middle of nowhere, handing tools to his ex-girlfriend like he was a novice assistant. It was ridiculous. It was absurd. And it was the most real thing he had done in a long time. You still know the difference between a 12mm and a 14mm wrench, Hannah commented from under the car. Some things you don't forget. Some things, she repeated, and Daniel couldn't tell if it was agreement or something more. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was different, as if the two of them were testing territory that used to be familiar, but now had new contours. Done, Hannah said, sliding out. You can lower it. If Daniel operated the lever, the car descended smoothly. Hannah stood up, stretching her back. She had grease on her face, on her neck, on her arms, and even so, Daniel thought she was exactly as he remembered. Focused, capable, completely in control. It's going to need parts, she said, taking off the gloves. I don't have some of them here. I'm going to have to order them. How long? 2, maybe 3 days. Daniel should have been irritated. He had commitments, meetings, a company to run. But when he looked at Hannah, at the old shop, at the scattered tools and the smell of oil that permeated everything, he discovered that he wasn't in a hurry at all. That's fine, he said. I'll wait. Hannah studied his face for a moment, looking for something. Daniel didn't know if she found it. There's an inn at the entrance to town, she finally said. It's nothing fancy, but it's clean. Perfect. She nodded, turned to put the tools away. And then a high-pitched voice cut through the air of the shop. Mom? Who's this man in the funny clothes? Daniel turned around. A girl of about 8 years old was standing at the door, backpack on her back, looking at him with a curiosity that bordered on criminal investigation. And behind her, Daniel saw something that made his heart stop. An old car, covered by a tarp, hidden in the back of the shop like a secret waiting to be discovered. The girl had the same eyes as her mother. Brown, intense, and at that moment, completely focused on Daniel, as if he were a rare zoo specimen. Mom, she repeated, without taking her eyes off him. Why is he sweaty and his shirt dirty? Hannah wiped her hands on the rag and approached her daughter. Because he wanted to help Lily. This is a customer. A customer who helps? Lily wrinkled her nose. That's weird. Daniel couldn't hold back the laugh. She has a point, he admitted. Lily continued studying him with that disconcerting intensity that only 8-year-old children can have. Are you rich? She suddenly asked. Lily, Hannah scolded. What? His car looks expensive, and so do his shoes, even though they're destroyed. Daniel looked at his own shoes. The girl wasn't wrong. I have a good job, he answered diplomatically. That's a rich person's yes, Lily concluded, turning to her mother. He talks just like those men in bank commercials. Hannah covered her mouth, clearly trying not to laugh. Lily, why don't you go do your homework? The gentleman. She hesitated. The customer was just leaving. Actually, Daniel said, I was curious about that car back there. The air changed instantly. Hannah went rigid. Lily looked at the tarp like it was an old friend. That's Grandpa's car, the girl said, before her mother could respond. It never works, but Mom keeps working on it every week anyway. Lily, Hannah said, her voice firmer now. Homework. The girl rolled her eyes with the drama of an award-winning actress, but obeyed. Before leaving, however, she looked at Daniel one last time. You should wash that shirt. You've got grease all the way up to your elbow. And she left, leaving Daniel with the distinct feeling that he had just been evaluated and found slightly inadequate. The silence that followed was heavy. Daniel looked at the tarp, then at Hannah. I didn't know you had a daughter. It's been 10 years, Daniel. A lot has happened. She said it without accusation, just fact, which somehow was worse. She's incredible, he said, because it was true. She's intense, Hannah corrected, but there was pride in her voice. She got that from someone, I don't know who. Daniel smiled. I have a theory, Hannah almost smiled back. Almost. Then she walked over to the covered car and pulled a corner of the tarp, revealing part of the body. A classic model, 60s era. Even covered in dust and missing parts, Daniel recognized the potential. "It was my father's," she said, answering the unasked question. "A project he started before he got sick. He never managed to finish it." Daniel touched the dusty body, and suddenly he was somewhere else. Another time. The memory came whole, like a movie. University parking lot. 2 in the morning. The cold autumn air and the smell of burning gasoline. Daniel was 23 years old and absolutely certain he was invincible. Next to him, leaning against the hood of a classic car they had spent 3 months modifying, was Hannah. 20 years old, full scholarship, and a talent he had never seen in anyone else. On the other side of the parking lot, 4 players from the lacrosse team were showing off the brand new car that one of their fathers had given as a birthday present. 0 miles on the odometer. Paint gleaming under the parking lot lights. More expensive than everything Hannah owned in her life. $1,000. The group's leader said, waving some bills. "If you have the guts." Hannah looked at Daniel, hesitant. "I don't know if—" 10,000. Daniel interrupted, pulling the checkbook from his pocket. Hannah's eyes went wide. "Daniel, what?" He shrugged, as if he had just ordered an extra dessert. "I trust you." The lacrosse players laughed, already feeling victorious. Hannah pulled Daniel by the arm and whispered, "Have you lost your mind? What if I lose?" "You're not going to lose," he replied, with an absolute certainty that she didn't understand where it came from. "You built this engine. You know what it's capable of. I'm just betting on what I already know is true." Hannah was silent for a moment. Then she shook her head, a smile escaping. "You're crazy. A crazy person who's going to be $10,000 richer," he winked. "Now go out there and do what you do best." The start was a blur. The first few seconds, chaotic. The athlete's car shot ahead, the new engine roaring with all its factory power. And then Hannah shifted gears. The classic responded as if it had woken from a deep sleep. The engine they had modified together, night after night in the garage, discussing every part, every adjustment, came alive. Daniel remembered being pushed back against the seat, remembered the speedometer climbing, remembered looking at Hannah and seeing something he had never seen in anyone, absolute control in the middle of chaos. She passed the athlete's car as if they were standing still. When they crossed the finish line, Daniel was screaming with joy. Hannah just smiled, that small smile that meant, "I told you so." And the lacrosse player who had bet? Daniel saw the tears, not almost tears, real tears, running down his face as he tried to understand how an old car had humiliated his brand new machine. That night, sitting on the hood of the winning car, sharing a bottle they had bought with part of the $10,000, Hannah was still laughing. $10,000, Daniel. You bet $10,000 on me without even blinking. And I won, he replied, smiling. Best investment of my life. Hannah looked at him, her eyes shining under the parking lot lights. One day I'm going to have my own shop. Classic restoration. Only cars that have history, and I'm going to invest. Daniel replied, full of certainty. As soon as I get access to my father's fund, we're going to be unbeatable. Hannah laughed, that light way that made Daniel's chest tighten. Why do you trust me so much? Because you're the smartest person I know, he said simply. And because you have no idea how incredible you are. Someone needs to remind you of that. Hannah was silent. Then she rested her head on his shoulder. You're crazy, you know that? You already said that. That's because it's still true, she murmured. But you're a crazy person that I like. For some reason, Daniel blinked. He was back in the shop. 10 years later, Hannah was watching him, and he knew she was also remembering. We were good together, he said quietly. Hannah held his gaze for a moment. 2, 3. And then she stepped back. That's in the past, Daniel. She said it firmly, without cruelty, but without room for discussion. Daniel wanted to disagree, wanted to say that some things don't stay in the past, that they just wait. But he stayed silent. The inn is on Main Street, Hannah said. Only yellow building in town. Thank you. He walked to the door, and then stopped. That car of your father's, what's the main problem? Hannah hesitated. The engine. I can't get it to start. Daniel looked at the car, then at her. Can I take a look tomorrow? Hannah didn't respond for a long moment. Why? Because maybe some things don't need to stay in the past. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. Daniel arrived at the shop at 8 in the morning wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers. Hannah looked at him from head to toe and almost dropped her screwdriver. What happened to the suit? I thought it didn't go well with grease. You look like a normal person. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment, she said, but she was smiling. It was a scientific observation. Daniel laughed. It was the first time she had made a joke directed at him since he had arrived. Progress. So, he said, pointing to the back of the shop. Are you going to officially introduce me to the car that hates you? Hannah rolled her eyes, but walked to the tarp and pulled it with a dramatic movement, like a magician revealing her most disastrous trick. Daniel Whitaker, this is the 1967 Mustang. Mustang, this is Daniel. Be nice to each other. Or not. He'll probably ignore you anyway. Daniel walked around the car, admiring the classic lines beneath the rust and gray primer. He's beautiful. He's stubborn, Hannah corrected. Beautiful and completely impossible, like certain ex-boyfriends who show up out of nowhere after 10 years. Daniel stopped walking. Was that a joke about me? I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her face completely innocent. I was talking about the car. Of course you were. Hannah opened the hood and the two of them leaned over the engine. Everything was there, or at least it should be. Original parts mixed with modifications, wires that seemed to have a life of their own, and a layer of accumulated frustration in every bolt. Okay, Daniel said. Tell me the medical history of this patient. Hannah crossed her arms and started listing. Temperamental ignition. Carburetor with existential crises. Electrical system that works when it feels like it, which is basically never. Oh, and once it started perfectly, drove 200 yards and died in the middle of Main Street. What happened? I had to push it back, alone, in the August sun. Nobody helped? There was an elderly lady on the sidewalk, Hannah said with absolute seriousness. She prayed for me. Daniel blinked. Prayed? 3 Hail Marys and 1 Our Father. I counted. She thought the car was possessed and asked if I wanted her to call the town priest. Daniel tried to hold it in, tried really hard, but the image was too strong. And you said what? That if the priest knew how to change a carburetor, he could come. Daniel lost the battle. The laughter escaped, loud and uncontrolled. Stop, Hannah said, but her lips were trembling. It's not funny, an elderly lady, praying. In the middle of the street, she was genuinely concerned about my soul. Because of a car. Because of this car, Hannah corrected, pointing at the Mustang. Which, honestly, sometimes I also think is possessed. They both laughed. And it was strange, because suddenly it felt like the 10 years had shrunk, as if they were back in the college garage, working on engines and making jokes that only they understood. Okay, Daniel said, wiping his eyes. Let me see this 4-wheeled rebel. He dove into the engine. Hannah went to get tools. And just like that, naturally, they fell into a rhythm. 12mm wrench, Daniel asked. Hannah handed it over. Phillips handed it over. Flashlight. You have 2 hands, use one of them to hold it. Daniel raised his head, feigning indignation. I'm trying to save your family's car and this is how you treat me? You're trying to impress the mechanic and you think I didn't notice. Is it working? No. Liar. Hannah threw a dirty rag at him. Daniel laughed and went back to the engine. 20 minutes later, he emerged with a thoughtful expression. I think I found one of the problems. One of them? The ignition system has been completely modified. Someone tried to adapt a racing configuration to a street engine. Hannah frowned. Modified how? Like someone wanted to get more power than the original system can handle. It's ingenious, but too aggressive for the rest of the parts to keep up. Oh, Hannah said, crossing her arms. That was me. Daniel looked at her with genuine admiration. You tried to turn this into a race car? I tried to make it deliver what I know it can deliver, she corrected. The problem is that the other parts are original. I needed a new cooling system, better injectors, reinforced wiring, but that costs more than I can afford right now. So you did the hard part first. I did the part I knew how to do. Daniel shook his head, impressed. You basically built a racing heart and put it in a body that can't handle the pace. Poetic, Hannah said, raising an eyebrow. But yes, that's exactly it. Why not go back to the original configuration? Hannah was silent for a moment. Because my father always said this car was born to race. I don't want to prove him wrong. Daniel looked at her. Understood. It wasn't just a car. It was a promise. You're impossible, he said, but his voice came out softer than he intended. You already knew that, Hannah replied, smiling. Really smiling, not that polite customer smile. By the way, you were worse. Remember when you decided you could make the engine deliver 20 more horsepower just by adjusting one little thing? It worked. It caught fire, Daniel. It worked for 30 seconds. Those were the most glorious 30 seconds of my life. Hannah burst out laughing, a real laugh, head thrown back, like she used to when she was 20, and the world still seemed full of possibilities. Daniel realized he had missed that sound. Okay, he said, clearing his throat. I'll see what I can do. It's going to take a few hours. You don't have to do this. I know, but I want to. Hannah studied him for a moment, then nodded. All right, but if you set my father's car on fire, you'll have to explain it to Lily, and she's much worse than me. Noted. Daniel went back to the engine. Hannah stayed there watching, and for the first time in 8 years, the Mustang didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a possibility. That's when the shop door opened and a male voice called out. Hannah? There's a huge imported car blocking the entrance. Whose thing is that? Hannah and Daniel turned around at the same time. A man of about 60 years old was at the door. Gray hair, brown eyes identical to Hannah's, and an expression of curiosity mixed with suspicion. Hannah's father had arrived, and he was looking directly at Daniel. Hannah's father had the kind of look that made you want to confess things you hadn't even done. Daniel felt like he was 15 again, being caught coming home after curfew. Dad, Hannah said, walking up to him. This is Daniel, customer. The man repeated, his eyes still fixed on Daniel. A customer who works on the Mustang? I asked for help. You never ask for help. Yeah, Hannah sighed. I'm trying new things. Her father extended his hand to Daniel. The grip was firm, very firm. Frank Mill Whitaker. Pleasure to meet you, sir. Whitaker, Frank repeated, as if filing the information away. Is that car out there yours? It is. Italian? Yes, sir. Frank nodded slowly. Nice car. Must give you a lot of trouble. It did, Daniel admitted. That's why I'm here. Frank looked at his daughter, then at Daniel, then at the Mustang with its hood open. It was obvious he was putting together a puzzle in his mind, and Daniel wasn't sure he wanted to know the conclusion. Grandpa, Lily's high-pitched voice cut through the tension like a hot knife through butter. The girl came running and threw herself into Frank's arms, who immediately transformed from intimidating interrogator into melted grandfather. My princess, he said, lifting her off the ground. How was school? Boring. The teacher made us draw fruit for 2 hours. 2 hours, Grandpa. I already know what a banana looks like. A tragedy, Frank agreed, serious. Totally, Lily confirmed. Then her eyes found Daniel. Oh, you're still here. Still here, Daniel confirmed. Did you sleep in those clothes? Lily, Hannah scolded. It's a valid question, the girl defended herself. Yesterday he was wearing a suit. Today he's in jeans. I'm tracking the evolution. Daniel couldn't help but smile. I bought new clothes to help at the shop. Lily said, clearly not impressed. Then she saw the Mustang with its hood open and her eyes lit up. Are you guys working on Grandpa's car? Before anyone could answer, she had already escaped Frank's arms and was walking toward the vehicle. Lily, be careful, Hannah said. Mom, I know how to take care of myself. The girl opened the driver's door and sat in the seat as if she did it every day. She probably did. It's not going to start, Lily announced, turning the pretend steering wheel. We know, Hannah said. No. I mean, you're looking in the wrong place. Daniel and Hannah exchanged a look. What do you mean? Daniel asked. Lily sighed, the way only 8-year-old children can sigh when they think adults are too slow. Every time Mom tries to start it, it chokes right here. She pointed to a specific part of the dashboard. It makes a sound like, she imitated a failing engine sound that was disturbingly accurate. And then it stops. Daniel looked at Hannah. Is she right? Hannah seemed torn between pride and irritation. She's describing the symptoms correctly. It's not just symptoms, Lily corrected. I know where the problem is. It's in that thing under the back seat. What thing under the back seat? Daniel asked. The gas thing, Lily said, as if it were obvious. Every time Mom starts the car, I hear a strange noise coming from there. It's like a cry. The car's crying, but nobody listens. Daniel bent down and looked under the back seat, then looked at Hannah. There's a secondary fuel pump here. I know, Hannah said. I installed it. Have you checked it recently? Hannah opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I focused on the ignition system. Because that's where the problem seemed to be. Daniel completed. But if the pump isn't sending enough fuel, the engine chokes, Hannah finished, her eyes widening. Every time, at the same point, because it runs out of fuel at the critical moment. They both looked at Lily, who was busy pretending to drive, completely oblivious to the fact that she had just solved an 8-year-old problem. How did you know that? Daniel asked. Lily shrugged. I pay attention, and the car tells me things. The car tells you things, Daniel repeated. Yeah, I sit here and listen. It makes different sounds when it's happy or sad or hungry. Cars don't get hungry, Hannah said, but her voice was weak. This one does, Lily replied simply. He told me. Frank, who had watched everything in silence, let out a laugh. She's just like you, Hannah. When you were her age, you also said cars talk to you. Hannah blushed. Dad, it's true. You were about 7, and you swore the old family Chevy had feelings. He did? Hannah murmured, and Daniel noticed she wasn't entirely joking. Lily got out of the car and walked up to Daniel. She stopped in front of him, arms crossed, in a pose that was a perfect copy of her mother. Are you going to fix Grandpa's car? I'm going to try. Trying isn't doing. Lily, Hannah warned. I'm just saying, the girl defended herself. Lots of people try. Nobody does. Daniel crouched down to her level. You're right. So let me rephrase. I'm going to do everything possible to fix this car. And if I can't, at least I'll figure out everything that's wrong so someone else can fix it later. Lily studied him for a long moment. Those brown eyes, so similar to her mother's, seemed to be reading his soul. Okay, she finally said. But if you hurt the car, I'll know. Deal. Lily nodded, satisfied, and walked toward the house, her backpack swinging on her back. Daniel stood up and found Hannah looking at him with a strange expression. What is it? Nothing, she said too quickly. Nothing. But Frank was smiling, a small smile, almost imperceptible. You know, the old man said, looking at the Mustang, this car has been waiting a long time. Maybe it just needed the right people working together. Hannah opened her mouth to respond. But before she could, Lily shouted from the door of the house. Mom, there's a man in a suit on TV talking about cars, and he has the same last name as the weird guy. Daniel froze. Hannah looked at him. Frank raised an eyebrow, and suddenly the air in the shop changed. Daniel had never run so fast toward a television in his life. When he reached the Miller family's living room, Lily was sitting on the couch, pointing at the screen with a piece of cookie in her hand. Look, she said. Whitaker. Same as you. On TV, a gray-haired man in an impeccable suit was talking about the expansion of a network of auto shops. At the bottom, the caption read, Richard Whitaker, founder of Whitaker Automotive. His father. Is he your relative? Lily asked, genuinely curious. Hannah arrived behind him, and Frank, all three looking at the screen. Whitaker Automotive, Frank said slowly. That's the biggest auto shop network in the country. He looked at Daniel, then at Hannah. Do you know these people? Hannah closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, her expression was that of someone who knew the situation had just gotten much more complicated. Dad, she said calmly. Daniel is his son, and the current CEO of the company. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a screwdriver. Frank looked at Daniel, then at Hannah, then at Daniel again. You knew? I dated him in college, Dad. Of course I knew. You dated the heir to an auto shop empire and you never told me? It wasn't relevant. It wasn't relevant? Frank seemed to be having trouble processing. Hannah, I've spent the last 10 years complaining about that company because they dominate the market and take customers from small shops. And you dated the owner? He wasn't the owner at the time. He was just a college kid with more money than common sense. Hey, Daniel protested. It's true, and you know it. Hannah cut him off. Lily raised her hand as if she were in school. So the weird guy is rich and was Mom's boyfriend? Lily, Hannah began. This is way more interesting than the banana story, the girl concluded, settling more comfortably on the couch. Continue. Frank cleared his throat. Lily, let's go get ice cream. But it just got good. Ice cream. Now. The girl sighed with all the drama her 8 years allowed. Fine, but I want a complete report when I get back. She pointed at Daniel. And you. Don't leave. I have questions. Noted. Daniel said. Lily left with her grandfather, but not without looking back 3 times. The door closed. Hannah turned to Daniel, arms crossed. Congratulations. Now my dad thinks I hid a secret from him for 10 years. You kind of did? Because it wasn't important, she said. You were the past, and I had more urgent things to deal with. Like what? Hannah laughed, but there was no humor. Like what? She repeated. Seriously, Daniel? Like taking care of my dad when he got sick. Like dropping out of college one semester before graduating. Like finding out I was pregnant and being abandoned. Like raising a daughter alone while keeping this shop running. Daniel was silent. Every word was a punch he deserved. I didn't know, he said quietly. Because you weren't here. Hannah didn't say it with anger. She said it as fact. You were building your empire while I was here. Changing diapers at 3 in the morning and fixing carburetors at 7. I looked for you, Daniel said. When you disappeared, I tried to find you. And when you couldn't, what did you do? He didn't answer. Because the answer was, he moved on. Exactly, Hannah said. You had that option. I didn't. I can help now, Daniel said. I can pay for your college, hire help for the shop, secure Lily's future. Stop. Hannah. I said stop. She took a step toward him, her eyes shining. You think the problem is money, that I'm here because I don't have the resources to leave? I didn't mean that. That's exactly what you said. Hannah took a deep breath. I don't need to be rescued, Daniel. I need to be seen, recognized, for what I've built, not for what I failed to do. I see you. No. You see the girl you dated 10 years ago, and you feel sorry for her because her life didn't go as planned. But you know what? My life is good. It's hard, it's exhausting, but it's mine. I raised an incredible daughter. I kept the family business going. I took care of my father. I know that, and it's incredible. Then why is the first thing you offer money? Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. She was right. I'm sorry, he said. I got the tone wrong. You got a lot more than the tone wrong. I know. He ran his hand through his hair. It's just, I don't know how to help any other way. My whole life, money has been the answer. Problem? Check. Obstacle? Investment. It's what I know how to do. Hannah studied him for a moment. The anger in her eyes softened, just a little. That's kind of sad, you know? It is? It is, because money doesn't fix everything. Sometimes what people need is presence. Someone who shows up and stays. I'm here. For now. She sighed. But for how long, Daniel? Until your car is ready and you go back to your life of meetings and million-dollar contracts? It was a fair question. Daniel wasn't sure of the answer. What if I don't want to leave? Hannah raised an eyebrow. The billionaire CEO wants to stay in a small country town fixing an old Mustang. The billionaire CEO wants to finish what he started. With you. Like it should have been 10 years ago. Hannah was silent for a long moment. Nice speech. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. Even so, she almost smiled. Almost. The door opened. Lily came in with ice cream dripping down her hand and eyes shining with curiosity. So, have you stopped fighting? More or less, Hannah said. Lily looked at Daniel. Are you really, really rich? Like private plane and everything? Lily, Hannah warned. I have access to one, Daniel admitted. Cool. Lily licked her ice cream thoughtfully. So can you buy the missing parts for Grandpa's car? Hannah covered her face with her hands. Daniel looked at the girl, then at Hannah. I can, he said. If your mother lets me. Lily turned to Hannah with puppy dog eyes. Mom, it's just parts. For Grandpa's car. Hannah sighed. She looked at Daniel. She looked at her daughter. All right, but just the parts. And you, she pointed at Daniel, are going to work on that car with your own hands. No hiring people. Understood? Understood. Lily celebrated with a little squeal, and Daniel realized he had just passed the first test. Now there were only about 50 more to go. Hannah closed the hood of the Italian sports car and gave the body 2 pats, as if congratulating a recovered patient. Done, she said, wiping her hands with a satisfied smile. Your car is like new. It's even better than when it got here. Daniel walked around the vehicle, admiring the work. It was flawless. How much do I owe you? Hannah handed him the bill. Daniel didn't even look at the amount. He just took his card from his pocket. You can leave whenever you want, she said. Go back to your life as an important executive. Daniel put the card away. He looked at the $400,000 car. Then he looked at the rusty Mustang in the back of the shop. Then he looked at Hannah. I think I'll stay a little longer. Hannah raised her eyebrows. Stay? Why? Your car is ready. The Mustang isn't yet. The Mustang isn't yours, Daniel, but I promised to help, and I'm a man of my word. She tilted her head, a smile playing on her lips. You're very stubborn. You know that? Is that a flaw? Usually yes. She shrugged, amused. But I accept help from stubborn people, especially when they pay for the parts. That was almost a compliment. It was an observation with compliment potential. Don't get too excited. 2 days later, the Mustang parts finally arrived. The truck parked in front of the shop at 7 in the morning, and the driver needed help unloading everything. "Did you order parts, or are you building a spaceship?" Hannah asked, looking at the stacked boxes, her eyes shining with excitement. "I ordered what you said you needed, and maybe a little bit more." "A little bit." She laughed. "Daniel, there are more than 20 boxes here." 23, Lily corrected, sitting on top of one of them. "I counted twice to be sure." "Get down from there, young lady," Hannah said, but she was smiling. "This box is comfortable. It feels like a throne. Queens don't sit on car parts boxes. This queen does." Hannah shook her head, defeated by her daughter's argument. Daniel started opening the boxes. New cooling system, high-performance injectors, reinforced wiring, fuel pump. Hannah picked up one of the injectors, and her eyes widened. "Wait, these are the titanium ones." "They are." "Daniel, these cost more than my car. My actual car, not the Mustang. You deserve the best for this project." She looked at him, then at the parts, then at him again. "You're impossible," she murmured, but her voice was soft. "Completely impossible. Is that a compliment?" "It's the closest you're going to get for now." The following hours were a blur of grease, sweat, and teamwork. Hannah was in charge, but in a light way. Playful. "Hey, graduated engineer," she called out at one point. "That bolt has feelings. Treat it with more care. Bolts don't have feelings. All of my father's bolts do." He gave each one a name. "You're joking. That one there is called Roberto." Daniel looked at the bolt, looked at Hannah. She was biting her lip to keep from laughing. "You're totally joking." "Maybe." She winked. "But now you're going to treat Roberto with respect, right?" Daniel laughed and went back to work, more carefully. At some point, Lily appeared with sandwiches and settled into the Mustang's seat. "You two look like an old married couple," she commented. Hannah blushed. "We're just working together, Lily. Working together and arguing about bolts, just like Grandma and Grandpa used to." Lily chewed thoughtfully. "Grandpa used to say every argument was a declaration of love in disguise." Hannah turned even redder. Daniel found it adorable. The hours passed, and gradually, piece by piece, the Mustang came back to life. "I think it's ready," Hannah said, wiping her hands. There was nervousness in her voice and hope. "It's going to work," Daniel said. "You don't know that." "No, but I believe in you," Hannah smiled, a small and genuine smile. Lily positioned herself next to Daniel like a fan at a championship game. "Go, Mom, the Mustang believes in you too." Hannah sat in the driver's seat, took a deep breath, put the key in the ignition. Through the rearview mirror, she found Daniel's eyes. "Here goes." She turned the key. The engine coughed, choked, made a strange noise. Silence. "Oh no," Lily murmured. Hannah turned it again. The engine coughed, choked, and roared. It wasn't a perfect roar. It was irregular, hesitant, but it was real, alive. Lily screamed with joy and ran off to call her grandfather. Hannah sat still, hands on the wheel, eyes watering. 8 years, she whispered. "It's been 8 years, Daniel." She turned off the engine, but didn't get out of the car. Daniel opened the passenger door and sat down next to her. The leather seat creaked under his weight. The smell of oil and history filled the small space. The two sat in silence for a moment, looking at the dashboard, at the steering wheel, anywhere but at each other. "My dad would be proud," Hannah said quietly. "He will be, when you show him." "Yeah," she smiled, still looking forward. "He will." More silence. "The good kind. The kind that doesn't need words." "You could have left," Hannah finally said, turning her face to him. "Your car has been ready for days." "I know, but you stayed." "I stayed." "Why?" Daniel looked at her, at the brown eyes, at the grease stain on her chin that she hadn't even noticed, at the woman he had let slip away 10 years ago, and who, by some miracle, was there again. "Because when I'm here," he said slowly, "I don't feel like being anywhere else." Hannah held his gaze. The air inside the car became denser, warmer. "That was very beautiful," she said. "Thank you. Did you rehearse it?" "A little bit," she laughed, a light, pleasant laugh. And then, without warning, she reached out and wiped a grease stain from his face. The touch lasted only a second, but it was enough. "You're dirty too," she said, her voice lower now. "I know. We should clean up." "We should." Neither of them moved. Hannah bit her lip. Daniel felt his heart race. "Daniel," she began. "Hannah," he replied. They both laughed, nervous, happy. And there, inside a 1967 Mustang that had finally come back to life, something between them also began to awaken. Something that had been dormant for 10 years. Something that perhaps had always been waiting for the right moment to wake up. The idea came at 9 at night, when Lily was already asleep and Frank had gone home. Hannah was putting away the tools when Daniel appeared at the shop door, the Italian car keys dangling from his finger. "Hey," he said. "The Mustang needs a real test." Hannah looked at him, then at the Mustang, then at him again. "Now? Now. It's 9 at night. So what?" Daniel smiled, that smile she had known for 10 years. The smile of someone about to do something they probably shouldn't. "Or are you scared?" Hannah felt something awaken in her chest, something that had been dormant for a long time. "I'm never scared," she said, grabbing the Mustang keys. "The question is, can you keep up? I have a $400,000 car. And I have a 1967 Mustang with the heart of a rocket." She winked. "Let's see what's worth more." 5 minutes later, the two cars were side by side at the shop entrance. The rumble of the engines cut through the silence of the night. Hannah rolled down the window. "To the Miller's Point lookout? Do I know the place?" "You'll know it when I leave you eating my dust." Daniel laughed. "You're very confident for someone who hasn't raced in 10 years. "Honey," Hannah said, putting on sunglasses even though it was night, "I never stopped racing. I just didn't have a worthy opponent." She accelerated before finishing the sentence. Daniel stood still for half a second, processing. Then he floored the accelerator. The road stretched ahead, empty and lit only by the moon. The two cars cut through the night like swift ghosts. The red Mustang roaring with the force of 8 years of waiting, the Italian sports car purring with the precision of $400,000 in engineering. Hannah looked in the rearview mirror and saw Daniel approaching. She shifted gears. The Mustang responded as if it had waited its whole life for this moment. The speedometer climbed. The wind came through the window, and Hannah felt something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. Daniel pulled up alongside her, rolled down the window. "Not bad for an old car," he shouted. "Not bad for a spoiled billionaire," she shouted back. He laughed. She laughed, and they both accelerated even more. The lookout appeared at the top of the hill. Hannah braked gently, the Mustang stopping with a satisfied rumble. Daniel parked beside her, the Italian car gleaming in the moonlight. They both turned off their engines. Hannah got out of the car, her legs a little shaky from the adrenaline. Daniel did the same. They both leaned against the Mustang's hood, looking at the city lights below. "You won," Daniel said. "I know, by a lot." "I know that too. Your car costs 50 times less than mine." And even smiled. "Humiliating, isn't it?" Daniel shook his head, laughing. "You haven't changed at all." "Yes, I have," she said, her voice softer now. "I've changed a lot. It's just that some things stay the same." She looked at him. He looked at her. The air between them became denser, warmer. "Hannah," Daniel began. "Daniel," she replied. "I'm going to do something now," he said slowly. "And if you want to stop me, this is the moment." Hannah didn't move. Daniel leaned in and kissed her. It was a soft kiss at first, hesitant, as if they were both testing whether this was real. Then it wasn't soft anymore. Hannah put her hand on the back of his neck and pulled him closer. Daniel held her by the waist. And there, between two cars and a sky full of stars, 10 years of distance disappeared. They stayed there all night, talking, laughing, remembering, planning. At some point, they lay down on the Mustang's hood, their bodies close, looking at the stars. Hannah pointed out constellations she had learned from her father. Daniel confessed he had never stopped to really look at the sky. In New York, the stars didn't exist. The hours passed without either of them noticing. And then slowly, the sky began to change. Black gave way to dark blue, then to purple, then to orange. Hannah opened her eyes. She hadn't even realized she had dozed off, and found herself facing the most beautiful sunrise she had ever seen. The sun was rising behind the mountains, painting the sky gold and pink. The city below was still asleep. The world was silent, and she was there, with her head resting on Daniel's chest, feeling his breathing rise and fall. "Hey," she whispered. Daniel opened his eyes, blinked against the light, looked at the horizon. "Wow," he murmured. "Yeah," Hannah agreed. "Wow." They sat in silence, watching the sunrise. They didn't need words. When the sky was completely clear, Daniel moved. He sat up on the hood, bringing Hannah with him. "I need to go back to New York," he said. "The company doesn't run itself." Hannah felt something tighten in her chest, but she didn't say anything. "But I don't want to go alone," he continued, turning to look into her eyes. "I want you and Lily to come with me. A few days. I want to show you my world, the same way you showed me yours." Hannah looked at him, at the eyes illuminated by the rising sun. "You want to take Lily to New York?" "Of course," Daniel smiled. "I need to win her over too, right?" "You do, and she's much harder than me." "I know. She already warned me about the screwdrivers." Hannah laughed. "So?" he asked. "What do you say?" She looked at the golden horizon, at the Mustang beside them, at the man in front of her. "All right," she said. "But if New York doesn't impress me, it's all your fault." Daniel smiled and kissed her again, with the sun rising behind them. And at that lookout, with the world waking up around them, they were both certain of one thing: this was only the beginning. Lily was waiting on the porch when Hannah and Daniel arrived the next morning. Arms crossed, reality show judge expression, a glass of juice in her hand as if it were a courtroom gavel. "You slipped out," she said. It wasn't a question. Hannah opened her mouth to respond, but Lily raised her hand. "No need to explain. I watch television." She looked from one to the other. "Are you two dating now?" Daniel choked on his own air. Hannah turned red. "Lily, sweetie, we can talk about this later." "Yes or no, Mom? It's a simple question." Daniel looked at Hannah. She looked at him. They both looked like two teenagers caught off guard. "If your mother wants to," Daniel said softly. "Yes." Hannah blushed even more, but smiled. Lily observed the exchange of glances between the two. She nodded slowly. "Okay." She pointed at Daniel. "You, come with me. You'll find out." Daniel looked at Hannah for help. She just shrugged, clearly amused. "Good luck," she said. "You'll need it." Lily marched toward the backyard. Daniel followed her, feeling like he was going to an interrogation conducted by someone 4 feet tall. The girl stopped under a big tree and turned to him. "Sit," she ordered, pointing to a tire swing. On the swing? "Sit." Daniel sat. The tires swung dangerously. He felt completely ridiculous. Lily stood in front of him, satisfied with the power dynamic. "First question," she said. "Do you know how to make pancakes?" "I do." "With a bare face?" "I can learn." Acceptable answer. Lily wrote something in a pink notebook. Second question. "Do you know how to play Uno?" "I do." "Do you know how to lose at Uno without getting angry?" Daniel hesitated. "I think so. We'll test that later." Another note. Third question. "If my mom cooks food and burns it, do you eat it anyway?" "Of course I do." Right answer. Lily put away the notebook. "Now come on. You're going to help me wash the Mustang." "Wash the Mustang?" "You heard me. Let's go." The next hour was a mix of water, soap, and relentless commands. "Not like that. In circles. You left a spot there. That sponge is for the wheels, not the body. Do you want to scratch my grandpa's car?" Daniel obeyed every instruction, soaked from head to toe, while Lily remained mysteriously dry and commanded operations from a beach chair. When they finished, the Mustang was shining, and Daniel looked like he had taken a hose shower. "Not bad," Lily conceded, "for a beginner." "Thank you." "I think." Lily studied him for a moment. "You're weird, you know that?" "Why?" "Because you're rich. You could have sent someone to do this, but you did it yourself." "You asked me to do it." "So what? Rich people don't usually listen to kids." Daniel crouched down to her level. "Lily, you're your mother's daughter. That makes you one of the most important people now. So if you ask me to wash a car, I wash the car." Lily was silent. Then she smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Okay, you passed, for now." She turned to leave, but stopped. "Oh, and I like chocolate ice cream, for future reference." Noted. She skipped toward the house, leaving Daniel relieved and completely soaked. That's when he heard a voice behind him. "You survived." Daniel turned. Frank was leaning against the shop door, arms crossed, watching. "I survived," Daniel confirmed. "She went easy on you." "That was going easy?" Frank didn't laugh. "Come here, I need to show you something." Daniel followed him into the shop. Frank walked to a wall full of old photos. He pointed to one of them. "This is Hannah at 19, first day at university." Daniel looked. Young Hannah, smiling, eyes full of dreams. "She was the best student this town ever saw," Frank said. "Full scholarship, bright future. I never saw anyone so determined." Daniel stayed silent, listening. Frank pointed to another photo. Older Hannah holding baby Lily, deep dark circles under her eyes, but smiling anyway. "And this is her 2 years later. She came home to take care of me when I got sick. Dropped out of college 1 semester before graduating." Frank took a deep breath. "And 3 months later, she found out she was pregnant." She told me a little about it, Daniel said quietly. She told you the short version. Frank turned to face him. I saw the full version. I saw my daughter cry in the bathroom where Lily couldn't hear. I saw her work 16 hours a day to keep this shop running while taking care of a baby alone. I saw her refuse every kind of help because pride was the only thing she still had left. Daniel felt a weight in his chest. The guy who was supposed to be Lily's father, Frank continued, showed up once after she was born. Looked at the crib, said he wasn't ready for this, and left. Never came back. Not a phone call. Not a birthday card. Nothing. I'm sorry. Don't feel sorry for me. Feel sorry for my daughter, who spent years thinking she wasn't enough. Frank took a step forward. But you know what I saw this week? I saw her laughing for real. I saw her racing cars in the middle of the night like she used to when she was a teenager. I saw her look at you the way I thought she would never look at anyone again. Daniel held Frank's gaze. I'm not going to hurt her, sir. Everyone says that. I know, but I'm not everyone. I waited 10 years to find her again. I'm not going to mess this up. Frank was silent for a long moment, studying, evaluating. I'll be watching, he finally said. Every step, every decision. And if you make my daughter cry again, it won't be Lily with the screwdrivers that you'll have to face. Understood, sir. Frank extended his hand. Daniel shook it. Welcome to the family, Frank said. Provisionally. When Daniel left the shop, Hannah was waiting outside. So? She asked. Did you survive both of them? Daniel looked back. Lily was waving from the porch. Frank was watching from the door. I think so, he said. But I have a feeling the tests will never end. Hannah laughed and intertwined her fingers with his. Welcome to the Miller family. And for the first time in his life, Daniel felt he had found a place where he wanted to stay forever. 5 hours on the road. 300 questions from Lily. And an Italian sports car that was definitely not designed for family trips. Are we there yet? No, Lily. How about now? Still no. How about now? Lily, Hannah turned to the back seat. If you ask again, I swear. Okay. Okay. The girl crossed her arms. But this car is cramped. The Mustang is more comfortable. The Mustang doesn't go 120 miles per hour, Daniel said. Do we need to go 120 miles per hour? No, but then the Mustang is better. Daniel looked at Hannah. She shrugged, hiding her laughter. She has a point, Hannah said. Are you two going to team up against me the whole trip? Probably. Lily replied from the back seat. It's more fun that way. The hours passed between license plate games, debates about which was the best ice cream flavor, chocolate, according to Lily. Any different answer was wrong, and 3 bathroom stops. Why do kids have bladders the size of a pea? Daniel muttered at the 3rd stop. I heard that. Lily shouted from inside the diner. You were supposed to. When they finally spotted the New York horizon, the sun was setting. The skyscrapers gleamed in orange and gold, like a forest of glass giants. Lily pressed her face against the window. Mom. Mom. Look at the size of those buildings. Hannah looked. Swallowed hard. The city seemed like another planet. But it also seemed familiar, in a painful way. You lived here, right, Mom? Lily asked. I did, Hannah said quietly. A long time ago. Daniel looked at her. He knew what the city represented. The dreams, the promises, everything that was left behind. The traffic was chaotic. Horns, taxis cutting in front, people crossing without looking. Why is everyone walking so fast? Lily asked. Is everyone late? Basically, yes, Daniel answered. For what? Nobody knows. But everyone is late anyway. That's very strange. Welcome to New York. Hannah remained silent. The buildings passed like ghosts from an old life. Every corner brought a memory. There was the cafe where she used to study late. There was the bookstore where she bought used books. There was the corner where Daniel kissed her for the first time, 10 years ago. Are you okay? Daniel asked quietly. I am, she lied. 20 minutes later, they stopped in front of a huge warehouse with the Whitaker Automotive logo. Is this a factory? Lily asked. Better, Daniel said. Come on. The warehouse was a division dedicated to restoring classics. Corvettes, Camaros, Mustangs, all in different stages of restoration. Mechanics worked with care, treating each car like a work of art. What is this place? Hannah asked, her voice faltering. The division I created when I took over the company, Daniel said. My father always focused on volume, quick repairs. I wanted to do something different, something that had soul. Hannah walked among the cars, touching the bodies, examining the engines. Her eyes shone in a way Daniel knew well. You built all of this? From scratch. It took me 3 years to convince the board that it was worth it. He smiled. It's still not the most profitable division, but it's the one I love the most. I come here whenever I can. I get my hands dirty when time allows. Lily had already found a mechanic and was interrogating him about the difference between V6 and V8 engines. She's going to take over this place in 10 minutes, Hannah said, laughing. I wouldn't doubt it. They stood in silence, side by side, watching the cars. Thank you, Hannah said, for bringing me here, for showing me this side of your life. I didn't just bring you here to show you the shop. Daniel pulled an envelope from his pocket. What is this? Open it. Hannah opened it. A letter with the letterhead of the university where she had studied, where they had met. She read the first lines. Stopped. Read again. Daniel, how did you get this? I asked my assistant to do an assessment of your academic situation, he said. You left school 10 years ago, but your record still exists. All the courses you completed are there, saved. Hannah looked at him, confused. And what does that mean? It means you can go back. Not exactly from where you stopped, because some things have changed in the curriculum. But the university has a re-entry program. You enroll again, validate the courses you already took, and complete what's left. Her hands were shaking, holding the paper. Daniel, this costs a fortune. Registration, tuition, books, materials. I know, and I'm going to pay for everything. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. He held her hands. It's not charity, Hannah. It's an investment, a partnership. You graduate in mechanical engineering, and then you take over this division with me. We expand to your town. We build this together. Hannah was silent for a long moment, her eyes full of tears. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice breaking. Because you're the most talented person I've ever met, and someone needs to remind you of that. She recognized the words, the same ones from 10 years ago, on the hood of an old car after a race in the middle of the night. You kept that? She whispered. After all this time, I kept everything, Hannah. Every word, every moment. I was just waiting for the chance to turn it into reality. A tear ran down her face. Then another. But what about Lily? Hannah asked. I can't just... She has school, she has her grandpa, she has her life there. There are excellent schools here, Daniel said calmly. Some of the best in the country. And Frank can come visit whenever he wants. We'll pay for the ticket. He can stay as long as he needs. Hannah shook her head. It's not just that, it's that. Where would we live? I can't afford to keep an apartment in New York, not even with the shop doing well. Daniel took a deep breath, looked into her eyes. Hannah, I live alone. An apartment that's too big for just one person. Too quiet, too empty. He squeezed her hands. If you want, we can share a life together. You, me, and Lily. Like a family. The air seemed to stop. Hannah looked at him, at the eyes she had known for 10 years, at the man who had shown up at her shop by accident and stayed by choice. Are you asking me to live with you? I'm asking you to build a life with me, Daniel said, the way it should have been 10 years ago, if you want. The silence lasted an eternity, compressed into seconds. What if it doesn't work out? Hannah asked quietly. What if it does? She didn't have an answer for that. Lily appeared out of nowhere, grease on her nose, and a huge smile. Why is Mom crying again? You promised you wouldn't make her cry. These are happy tears, Hannah said, laughing and crying at the same time. Are there happy tears? There are, sweetheart. Hannah looked at Daniel. There really are. Lily looked from one to the other, suspicious. You two look like you're hiding something. What's going on? Daniel crouched down to her level. Lily, what do you think about living in New York? The girl's eyes went wide. Living? Like really living? Like really living. You, your mom, and me. Together. Lily was silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then she exploded. Am I going to have my own room? Can I decorate it any way I want? Are there schools with mechanics classes? Can we visit Grandpa? Can I bring my tools? Daniel laughed. Yes to everything. Lily turned to her mother, eyes shining. Like, Mom, say yes. Please, please, please. Hannah looked at her daughter, at Daniel, at the letter in her hand, at the shop full of cars waiting to be given new life. Just like her. All right, she finally said. We accept. Lily screamed with joy and jumped into Daniel's arms. Hannah laughed, tears still falling. And there, in the middle of that noisy shop, surrounded by classic cars and old dreams, the three of them hugged for the first time, like a family. Daniel's apartment had more bathrooms than Hannah's entire house, Mom. Lily whispered on the first day, eyes wide. There's a television in the bathroom mirror. In the mirror. I know. I don't know. Rich people are so strange. Hannah couldn't disagree. The apartment occupied the top floor of a building in Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows, view of Central Park, furniture that looked like it came out of a magazine. And silence. A silence that felt wrong after years of hearing the noise of the shop. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller." Hannah jumped in surprise. A woman in an impeccable uniform had appeared out of nowhere. "This is Margaret," Daniel said, entering the room. "She's been taking care of the apartment for 15 years. "You can call me Hannah," she said, extending her hand. Margaret looked at the extended hand as if it were a strange object, then shook it, politely confused. "Of course, Mrs. Hannah. Just Hannah." "Yes, Mrs. Hannah." Daniel hid his laugh behind a cup of coffee. Lily's adaptation was instant. In 3 days, she had already reorganized her room, convinced Margaret to make pancakes for breakfast, and figured out how to use the sound system to play music in every room at the same time. Lily, Hannah called on the 4th day, when a pop song invaded even the bathroom. "How did you do this?" "Margaret taught me." "Margaret taught you to turn the apartment into a dance club?" "No, she taught me where the buttons are. The dance club was my idea." Margaret appeared at the door, her face slightly embarrassed. "Miss Lily is very persuasive." "She's stubborn," Hannah corrected. "I preferred determined," Lily shouted from the hallway. Hannah looked at Daniel, who was watching everything with a huge smile. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "Very much," he admitted. "This apartment has never had so much life. College was harder." On the first day, Hannah entered the classroom and realized she was the oldest one there by at least 10 years. The other students looked like babies with expensive laptops and fashionable clothes. "Excuse me," a boy asked. "Are you the substitute teacher?" Hannah swallowed hard. "No, I'm a student." The boy blinked, then smiled, embarrassed. "Oh, cool, sorry." "It's okay." It wasn't okay. Hannah sat at the back of the room, feeling like a fraud. What was she doing there? She was 30 years old, had an 8-year-old daughter, and was trying to compete with kids who had just graduated high school. At lunchtime, she called Daniel. "I can't do this." "Do what?" "This. College. I'm too old. Everyone looks at me weird." A boy thought I was a teacher. "And what did you say?" "That I was a student." "And did he faint from shock?" "No, he apologized." "Then what's the problem?" Hannah was silent. "Hannah," Daniel said, his voice soft. "You're not there to impress anyone. You're there to finish what you started, for your dream, not for what others think. What if I can't do it?" "You restored a 1967 Mustang that had been abandoned for 8 years. You raised a daughter on your own. You kept a shop running." He paused. "A classroom is not going to defeat you." Hannah took a deep breath. "You're very good with words, you know that?" "I know. That's why I'm CEO." She laughed. Despite everything, she laughed. "I love you," she said before realizing it was the first time she had said it. The silence on the other end lasted a second. "Too?" "I love you too," Daniel replied. "Now get back to class and show those babies how it's done." Hannah hung up smiling. The weeks went by. Hannah adapted. The classmates stopped looking at her strangely when they discovered she knew more about engines than the professor. Lily made friends at her new school and convinced Margaret to watch cartoons with her every afternoon. And every night, the 3 of them had dinner together. "I want pancakes," Lily announced on a Friday. "For dinner?" Hannah asked. "Daniel promised he was going to teach me how to make them with a bare face." Hannah looked at Daniel. "You promised that?" "I may have mentioned something about pancakes," he admitted. "With a bare face," Lily added. "Don't forget the important part." 20 minutes later, the kitchen was a disaster. Flour on the floor, batter on the ceiling, no one knew how, and Lily wearing a chef's hat that Margaret had found in some cabinet. "This pancake doesn't look like a bear," Lily said, looking at the pan. "It looks like an abstract bear," Daniel argued. "It looks like a potato with eyes. Potatoes can be bears." "No, they can't." Hannah watched the 2 of them leaning against the counter, the destroyed kitchen. Her daughter covered in flour, the man she loved arguing about pancake shapes with an 8-year-old. It was chaotic, it was messy, it was perfect. "Mom," Lily called. "Why are you crying?" Hannah touched her own face. She hadn't even noticed. "They're happy tears," she said. Again, Lily rolled her eyes. "Adults cry a lot over good things. It's because sometimes we take a long time to believe that good things can happen," Hannah explained. Lily thought for a moment. "That's kind of sad." "It is, but it's also kind of beautiful." Daniel came over and put his arm around her. Lily turned her attention back to the pancakes. "Welcome to your new life," he whispered. Hannah smiled. "I like it. Even with flour on the ceiling?" "Especially with flour on the ceiling." That night, the three of them ate pancakes of questionable shape, laughed until their stomachs hurt, and Hannah realized something important. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. The credit card felt heavier than a piece of plastic should. "There's no limit," Daniel said casually, placing the card in Hannah's hand. "Buy whatever you need." "There's no limit?" "No. What do you mean there's no limit?" "It means you can buy whatever you want without worrying about the price." Hannah looked at the card as if it were a bomb about to explode. "That's terrifying. For most people, it's liberating." "I'm not most people." Daniel laughed and kissed her forehead. "That's why I love you. Victoria will accompany you. She's been my personal assistant for 5 years. She can find anything in New York." Victoria arrived at 2 o'clock sharp, hair pulled back in an impeccable bun, high heels that made an authoritative sound on the floor, and a tablet that seemed like an extension of her arm. "Mrs. Miller," she said, extending her hand. "Pleasure to meet you." "Hannah." "Just Hannah." "Of course, Mrs. Hannah." Hannah sighed. She was Margaret 2.0. The first store was intimidating. Clothes hanging like works of art, saleswomen who looked like models, and prices Hannah refused to look at. "This one would be perfect for the occasion," Victoria said, holding up an elegant black dress. Hannah looked at the tag. She almost choked. "This costs more than my car." "Your car is a 1967 Mustang, Mrs. Hannah. This costs more than most cars." "That doesn't make me feel better." Victoria almost smiled. Almost. Hannah tried on 7 dresses, all beautiful, all very expensive, all making her feel like a fraud. "You don't seem comfortable," Victoria observed. "I look like someone pretending to be someone else." Victoria studied her for a moment, then put the tablet away. "May I be honest, Mrs. Hannah? Please. I've worked for Mr. Whitaker for 5 years. I've seen many women trying to impress him." She paused. "You're the first one he's brought to meet his parents." Hannah blinked. "Really? Really? So stop trying to be who you're not. Be who made him fall in love." Hannah looked in the mirror, at the woman in the expensive dress she didn't recognize. "What if his parents don't like who I am? Then that's their problem, not yours." Hannah smiled. Maybe Margaret 2.0 wasn't so bad after all. The winning dress was the 12th. Navy blue, elegant, but not overdone, with a cut that made Hannah look like herself. Just a more polished version. "This one," Victoria said, nodding. "This is you." Victoria still insisted on a stop at the salon. Hair, makeup, nails. Hannah tried to resist. "I know how to do my own makeup. I know you do. But today you're going to let someone else do it. Consider it a gift from Mr. Whitaker." Hannah sighed and surrendered. 2 hours later, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. Her hair was down in soft waves, the makeup highlighted her eyes without looking overdone, and the blue dress felt perfectly. When Hannah walked into the apartment that night, Daniel was in the living room adjusting his tie. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and stopped, completely. The tie was forgotten in his hand. His mouth opened slightly. His eyes traveled over Hannah from head to toe, as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Hannah," he said, his voice husky. "What is it? Does it look weird? You look perfect." He walked up to her. "Absolutely perfect. It's just a dress. It's not the dress. It's you. The dress is just lucky to be on you." Hannah laughed, blushing. "That was really cheesy. It was sincere." He kissed her softly. "My parents are going to love you," he said, "because it's impossible not to love you." Lily appeared in the hallway wearing a floral dress. "Yuck. Are you being gross again?" "Yes," Daniel answered. "Adults are weird." Lily looked at her mother and stopped. "Mom, you look really pretty, like a movie actress." "Thank you, sweetheart. Like really, really pretty." She turned to Daniel. "Did you see?" "Believe me," Daniel said, still looking at Hannah. "I saw." The car stopped in front of the Whitaker mansion. Lily pressed her nose against the window. "Mom, that house has more windows than our school. Rich people are so strange." Daniel's mother appeared in the hall like a queen. Eleanor Whitaker was elegant, impeccable, and had an X-ray gaze. "Daniel, you're late?" "Traffic, Mom." Her eyes landed on Hannah. "You must be the famous Hannah. Daniel says you're a mechanic." "I am. I have a shop with my father." "Interesting." Daniel's father appeared smiling. "Hannah, finally, and this must be Lily." "You have a naked statue in your garden," Lily said. "Lily," Hannah whispered. It's Greek art, Richard explained, laughing. Greek art doesn't wear clothes? Apparently not. Weird. Richard burst out laughing. Eleanor developed a headache. Dinner started tense. Eleanor asked trick questions. The portion is small, Lily observed. It's an appetizer, Eleanor explained. An appetizer for what? For the real food? Richard almost spit out his wine. But everything changed at dessert. You work with classic cars, Eleanor said. What kind? American from the 60s. Mustangs, Camaros, Corvettes. Do you know the difference between a 289 and a 302 engine? The 289 has a smaller block. The 302 came later, more torque. But the 289 high performance is still my favorite. Eleanor was silent. Then she smiled. You like classic cars? Hannah asked, surprised. I love them. But no one in this family understands the difference between managing auto shops and actually getting your hands greasy. She shot a look at Daniel. My son created a restoration division, but he rarely has time to show up there. It's hard to balance, Daniel defended himself. It's a matter of priority. Eleanor turned to Hannah. That's why I like you. You don't talk about cars, you live cars. Hannah smiled, touched. The rest of the evening was different. Eleanor and Hannah discussed carburetors. Lily fell asleep after 3 desserts. At the goodbye, Eleanor held Hannah's hand. You're different from what I expected. Is that good? It's good. Welcome to the family. In the car, Daniel smiled. You won over my mother. She really likes cars. Who would have thought? Hannah looked out the window. Lily was sleeping in the back. The city was shining. She belonged now. For real. 6 months passed like a well-tuned engine, fast, smooth, and full of life. Hannah was in her last semester of college. Her grades were excellent. The professors were already talking about recommending her for specialization programs. And most importantly, she finally believed she belonged in that place. Lily had become the school mascot. She made friends as easily as she had opinions about everything. Margaret no longer even tried to resist her requests. And every week, without fail, she called her grandfather to tell him every detail of life in New York. Grandpa, you need to see how big the buildings are. They're real giants. I know, sweetheart, you tell me every week. Because it's important. You have to come see. One day I will. What Lily didn't know was that day had come. Daniel had called Frank 3 weeks earlier, in secret. The conversation was short and direct. Mr. Miller, I want to ask your daughter to marry me. And I want you to be present. The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds. It's about time, kid, Frank replied. Send the ticket. But it wasn't just Frank. Daniel had spent weeks organizing everything. The Mustang was taken to the company's restoration division. An entire team worked on the body and paint. The car that Hannah and Daniel had fixed together was now perfect. Bright red. Like new. Like it always should have been. Eleanor and Richard were also involved. For the first time, Eleanor had offered to help, and Daniel almost fell out of his chair when she showed up at the shop to supervise the final details. The paint needs to be flawless, she told the team leader. This woman knows cars. She'll notice any mistake. On a Friday in October, Daniel told Hannah he needed to show her something at the company's shop. Something important. What is it? She asked in the car. A surprise. I don't like surprises. You'll like this one. Lily, in the back seat, was swinging her legs with anticipation. Mom, stop asking questions. You're ruining the surprise. You know what it is? No, Lily said too quickly. Hannah looked at her through the rearview mirror. You're lying. Okay, I know a little bit, but I can't tell. I promised. Daniel parked before Lily could say more. We're here. The restoration division warehouse was strangely silent. Normally there was noise from tools, music, mechanics talking, but at that moment, nothing. Daniel opened the door, and Hannah stopped breathing. In the center of the shop, illuminated by a spotlight, was the Mustang, but not the Mustang she knew. This one was perfect. The body gleamed in vivid red. The paint was flawless. The chrome sparkled. It was the car her father had always dreamed of, finally complete. Daniel, she whispered, her voice failing. How did you... But then she saw something else. Standing next to the car, smiling, was Frank. Dad? Hi, sweetheart. Hannah covered her mouth with her hands. The tears came instantly. Grandpa, Lily screamed, running into his arms. You're really here. Hannah was right behind, hugging them both. When she stepped back, she saw 2 more figures behind the car. Eleanor and Richard. You didn't think we'd miss this, did you? Eleanor said. Hannah looked around. The Mustang, her father, Daniel's parents, everyone who mattered gathered there. What's happening? Daniel walked over to her. He took her hands in his. Hannah, he said. 10 years ago, I met a girl at a university. She was stubborn, talented, and amazing, and I was foolish enough to let her slip away. When my car broke down on that road, I thought it was the worst day of my life. But it was the best, because it brought me back to you. He looked at Frank, who pulled a velvet box from his pocket and handed it to Lily. Your mission, young lady. Lily walked solemnly over to them, holding the box like a treasure. She opened it carefully, revealing 2 shiny rings. I practiced this all week, she said, serious. I'm not going to drop them. Daniel picked up one of the rings and knelt down. Hannah Miller, will you? Yes, Daniel blinked. I didn't even finish. The answer is yes. Mom. Lily rolled her eyes. Let him finish. Hannah laughed, crying. Okay. Finish. Will you marry me and let me be part of your family forever? Yes. 1,000 times yes. He placed the ring on her finger. She placed the other one on his. And then they kissed, right there in the middle of the shop. Gross part, Lily muttered. Beautiful part, Frank corrected, emotional. When they separated, Hannah was radiant. But then something changed. The color drained from her face. She put her hand to her mouth. Hannah? Daniel asked. Are you okay? I'm dizzy. She wobbled. Daniel caught her. Sit here. Breathe. It must be the emotion, Richard said. But Eleanor was watching Hannah with clinical eyes. Hannah, dear, she said. When was your last period? The silence was absolute. Hannah's eyes went wide. She did the math in her head, looked at Daniel, looked at her own belly. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God! Everyone screamed together. You're pregnant. Daniel went white, completely white. Pregnant? He repeated, his voice squeaky. Like a baby? That's usually how it works, son, Richard said. A baby, small, that cries and needs diapers. Daniel started hyperventilating. What if I drop it? He won't drop it, Hannah said, laughing. You don't know that. I dropped my phone yesterday. Wait, Lily shouted. I'm gonna have a little brother. Or sister, Hannah said. Finally, someone for me to boss around. Frank hugged his daughter, his eyes full of tears. You deserve all this happiness, my girl. Daniel was still in shock, mumbling about diapers and phones when Hannah held his face. Hey, she said, we're going to handle this. Together. He looked at her belly, at the ring on his finger, and finally smiled. Together, he repeated. And in that shop, surrounded by classic cars and the people they loved most, 2 hearts that had lost each other 10 years ago finally found their destiny. A restored Mustang, a reunited family, a baby on the way, and the certainty that some broken roads lead us exactly where we need to be. The end. What did you think of this love story that started with a broken car and ended with a complete family? Leave your opinion in the comments. On a scale of 0 to 10, what grade would you give this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive more touching stories like this one. See you next time.